In 1978, Hollywood made audiences believe a man could fly. In 2006, he returned to stop a bad real estate deal. He went through a dramatic emo phase in 2013, but now he's back and a bit more Boy Scout than ever. This is Sarah reporting for the Daily Planet, and yes, today we're talking about Superman. Before we begin exposing the man behind the cape, make sure to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to smash that bell icon to stay up to date with all our latest releases, we really appreciate it. Now keep your kryptonite handy just in case it's time to take on Superman. Let's get to it. The film opens up on some exposition text. For over 300 years, metahumans have been on Earth. Then 30 years ago, Kal-El crashed on Earth. Then 3 years ago, he came out the closet as Superman, and 3 minutes ago, he got his ass kicked. Superman crashes into the snow somewhere deep in the Arctic, all bloodied and bruised. If you've seen the trailer, this is that whole part where he whistles and Krypto the Superdog shows up and eventually drags him back to the Fortress of Solitude. We get some more exposition here, this time from Kalex, where he says they have no emotion, and then like 2 seconds later, one of the other robots exhibits exuberant emotion when Superman smiles at her. That's pretty much sums up the entire tone of this film. But before I go any further into this review, I just want to say that I am a fan of James Gunn. I thoroughly enjoyed the Suicide Squad and even the spin-off series, Peacemaker, but I've never been a fan of the Golden Age Boy Scout Superman. I grew up reading the Silver Age stuff from the 90s, you know, where Superman had a mullet and even a beard sometimes. Or alternatively, the animated series where he had his light-hearted moments but felt a bit more adult. I even enjoyed Smallville for what it was, but this is goofier than Dean Cain's Lois and Clark TV show. Anyway, after he gets a dose of sunbeams to bring him back to 80% strength, he's got to get back into the fight. Now Superman has super hearing, right? Funny, I thought he did, but apparently not, because as he flies off, he passes by an engineer, who I'm going to refer to as Mercy, since that's who she really is, an associate of Lex Luthor's, who is loudly talking on her earpiece and wearing an all-black suit, sticking out like a sore thumb in the white snow. But we can chalk it up to Superman being distracted, I suppose. Yet he did have time to play with his dog. But let's be serious, everyone wants to play with their dog. Moving on, title credits kick on and we cut to Metropolis. The Hammer of Boravia is giving a speech of how he's a badass and whooped the superhero's ass, when whoosh, here comes the Superman. From a tower across the way, we're introduced to Lex Luthor, a room full of boy band-esque looking tech bros, manning all sorts of stations. They are programming attacks into a computer as if they are playing Injustice. So does this make Hammer an Amazo? The flight gets heated, Lex spouting off combo moves like he's a hero to win an MK tournament, and Superman gets smacked down, plummeting into the streets below. Meanwhile, Mercy is relaying information about the Fortress of Solitude, but before she can begin her infiltration, the fortress sinks beneath the snow, since the diversion is no longer needed. Lex calls back his henchmen and the hammer takes off and disappears. Superman, still trying to recoup himself, tries to stumble out of the crater he caused, but he's too weak, and some bystanders climb down to assist him. He looks a bit embarrassed and some of the crowd even makes a joke to hammer it home. Back at Lex's, the room erupts into cheers for a successful day. The hammer lands somewhere in the desert and enters a strange tunnel, which acts like a kind of Stargate, taking him from one location and dropping him off at Luthor Corp. He takes off his helmet and it's Black Noir? No, but he's wearing a similar mask underneath, which also resembles the protective suit Doomsday was wearing in his initial appearance in The Death of Superman. So who is he? Well, you will find out. Cut to the Daily Planet. It's business as usual, and Superman, now in Clark's disguise, is getting a pep talk from his mum over the phone, while also kind of being talked at by Steve Lombard, and insulted by Cat Grant, who for some reason looks like Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat from Spider-Man. Multiverse maybe? Nah, but it is an odd choice for a character's look. Enter Jimmy Olsen, who literally knee slaps Clark's knees with a copy of today's paper, congratulating him on yet another banger of an article. Well, you can't introduce Jimmy without also introducing the woman of Clark's life, Miss Lois Lane, who immediately goes into journalistic mode and begins questioning Clark on what he knows about what just happened. If he has any insight on who the Hammer is and why he has just suddenly showed up, demanding to fight Superman. He tells her it's all in his article, and she dismisses it, basically calling his writing inferior. That is very mean. Clark is also still pretty visibly upset that he got his ass handed to him, suggesting that he held back. Even though the villain called himself the Hammer of Boravia, the country of Boravia itself denies any involvement. This piques both Lois and Clark's journalistic instincts, and he lets slip that he interviewed Superman right after the fight, and that Superman also thought that the Hammer's accent was fake. Lois points out that this isn't odd that Clark is always able to get these one-on-one interviews with Superman, and he says it's because of his professionalism, which chuffs her buttocks. We cut out to the Pentagon, and Lex Luthor is showing the DOJ a fancy little demonstration video of a new super soldier he created called Ultraman. Yes, it's the guy who was in the Hammer suit. He also shows off what Mercy can do, which, to sum up, she has a bunch of nanoites pumped into her body, which gives her a bunch of abilities similar to the T-1000. And then he has his Raptor Squad, which ironically can't run really fast, but they can fly using jetpacks. All of this is bundled together under the name Planet Watch, which he proposes that the government use to stop aliens and metahumans from running amok. Now, obviously, it's much more personal than that for good old Lex, as Boravia is one of the higher clients of Luthor Corp, purchasing countless weapons from him, and so when Superman flew in and stopped the war from happening, this was bad for business. Through a bunch of exposition and dialogue, which in this case works, we learn that the government knows of Superman's weakness to kryptonite. But that is pretty much all gone from Earth, yet Lex counts that he has a workaround for that. We then jump to Lois Lane's apartment. She's just returned home from a long day at work when some noise startles her, and it is Clark cooking dinner. They share a kiss, and all the antagonistic display we saw earlier at the Daily Planet was just for show, and she knows he's Superman. Good, I love that. So now we get the second big trailer scene, the one where Lois interviews Clark as Superman, asking him the tough questions, and boy does his ego bruise easily. To sum it up, Superman maintains that what he did was right, that the Boravian government, regardless of what they say on TV, did not have good intentions towards the country of Johannesburg, and we're going to kill a lot of innocent people. Lois, on the other hand, whether she knows that the Boravians are lying or not, thinks the issue is more complex, because of the rules of foreign diplomacy, borders, and public perception. This boils over into an argument about their relationship with one another. And okay, so from personal experience, I can totally understand walking away when things get heated with someone you love. Sometimes cooling off can keep you from saying something you'll regret in a moment of anger. But while I joked earlier on that this Superman is the Golden Age Boy Scout version, he's more and more displaying that he's also really toxic, often gaslighting Lois during her interview so he can make himself look better. The next day, Lex Luthor uses the coordinates he got from Mercy to go and find the Fortress of Solitude, and using some devices brings it up out of the snow just like that and walks in. Easy. Ultraman and Mercy make a quick work of the robot guards and even poor Crypto, but don't worry, he is unharmed, just immobilized. Mercy uses her nanonite body to hack into the computer, uncovering a message from Jor-El, played by the wasted Bradley Cooper and his mother Lara. While Lex moves into phase 2 of his dastardly plan, back in Metropolis, some henchmen working for Luthor unleash an alien creature. It kind of reminds me of Stitch, but less cute. And he's about to go and spread some chaos. By morning though, the little guy is now a big kazoo, wreaking havoc on the city, and so of course Superman flies in to save the day. A quick news position name drops Jitter's coffee shop where the creature was spotted when he was still small, until he had a bunch of lattes. The power of caffeine, eh? Suddenly, right in the middle of the fight, the Justice Gang show up. Green Lantern, Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific. And they work for the Lord Tech Corporation, aka Maxwell Lord. Which, if you're familiar with the comics, is not a good dude. I don't know if it's still canon or not, but he did show up in Wonder Woman 1984, and the only reason I mention this is because the show Peacemaker, which until season 2 drops, we won't know how they'll resolve him being in the new DC universe, but interacting with the old Snyderverse Justice League members. While fists are flying and gadgets are deployed, green light is shone brightly and eventually the foursome triumph, with Superman catching the beastie before it topples over onto the gawking crowd below, and peacefully laying it down in a park. As they greet the crowd and revel in the attention, it quickly sours when a large screen on the side of a building reveals that Superman was sent on a mission to Earth to conquer it. Uh-oh, Superman is in trouble. Now, so here's the rub. Original message was corrupted, and so Superman only heard the half of the first message, which basically told him that his parents loved him, his planet was dying, and he was sent to Earth to be saved. Mercy, when she hacked the computer, uncovered more of the message, and apparently this translates to humans are dumb animals, conquer them, kill as many as you have to, build a new Krypton. However, since this is being brought by Lex, much like our Orange in Chief, the message cannot be trusted, as it is most likely propaganda for his agenda, using AI reconstruction and whatnot to make a fake video. So what does this mean for our boy in blue? He's gonna turn himself in to the government to answer some questions. The people basically turned on him within a second, even though he just saved countless lives. But regardless, this is his only option to face a jury of his peers and tell his side of the story. But first, a quick trip to the fortress because clearly someone broke into it to get the message in the first place. As he flies home, we cut to Boravia, who is giving a press conference and absolutely thrilled about the news about Superman. We meet the Boravian Prime Minister, played by Zlatko Buric, who you might remember from the film 2012, as the shitty rich Russian guy. And when he returns to his office, he uses a secret transport tunnel to meet up with Lex Luthor. Back at the fortress though, Superman sees the destruction Lex left behind and says goodbye to Kalex number 4. He then notices that his dog is missing. Oh no. That's time to go John Wick. He flies off quick, fast and in a hurry and storms into Lex Luthor's office, screaming about his dog. Lex calmly denies any knowledge of Krypto's whereabouts, while Superman rants and raves about it. Lex has been secretly recording it and streaming it online, which a Stephen Miller stand-in on Sphere News plays on repeat, spouting anti-Superman stuff. And guess who cameos? Alpha Bro and son of the clan Dragon, Peacemaker, who relishes in taking Superman down a few notches. Superman returns home to his apartment, mentally defeated, and plops down on the couch, while outside his window Green Lantern is battling some giant translucent tentacled eyeball thing. Lois is here, waiting to cheer him up, handing him a mug of hot cocoa. She gives him a lesson in life and humility by comparing herself to punk rock and him to pop radio, and how they are two different worlds but also find common ground. Superman comes to the conclusion it's time to turn himself in, and maybe find Krypto along the way. God, he's having a rough time, Superman. This is quite sad. The moment he turns himself in, though, he's treated like an immo in Guantanamo Bay, using Ultraman smashing him into the ground, cuffing him harshly, and Rick Flag Sr. denying him his Miranda rights. He's then flown to an undisclosed location in the middle of the desert, thrown through the trans-dimensional portal and placed in a Superman-proof glass cell. And guess who's waiting for him? Lex Luthor. Now he can talk all the shit he wants, free from consequences like a keyboard warrior on Facebook. And guess what else is in the new dimension? Kryptonite. Meanwhile, back at the Daily Planet, Lois and Jimmy are digging for answers on how Lex is involved and why. Turns out Luthor Corp didn't just sell weapons to Boravia, but also gave them a bunch for free, as Lex and the Boravian Prime Minister have a deal to divvy up Jahanapur, splitting the land between one another. Real estate mogul Lex, you've made a spacey return. Jimmy, using a contact named Mutant Toes, learns that Superman is being held in a pocket universe, and so Lois gears up for a rescue mission. In this pocket dimension, and I physically facepalmed harder than the Captain Picard meme at this, Lex has an army of Capuchin monkeys, with their brains connected to a supercomputer, putting out anti-Superman tweets. What is he, Elon Musk? Anyway, so the pocket dimension prison is a lot like the monster prison from Cabin in the Woods, with stacks of glass cubes housing all sorts of aliens and whatnot in them. However, this technology resembles that of Brainiac's, but also that of the Preserver, DC's version of the Collector, who once hired Lobo to hunt and capture Superman for his museum of priceless collections. Back in Metropolis, Jimmy meets up with his contact, who turns out to be Eve Tessmacher. If you don't know who that is, she was originally a character created by Richard Donner in the 1978 Superman film, but has gone on to do many appearances in other films and comics as well, usually as a secretary for Lex Luthor himself. Well, in this film, she and Jimmy apparently used to date until he found out her mutant toes. And now he's just gaslighting her into giving him information on Lex with a fake promise that they can get together afterwards. That's fair if she gets some information for Superman. We then cut back to Superman's jail cell. He is being guarded by Metamorpho, a meta-human with the ability to reconfigure his atomic structure into an element, for example, kryptonite. The only reason he's working for Lex is because Luthor is holding his son captive in one of the cells. I also want to point out that Metamorpho is played by the incredible Anthony Carrigan, who you might know from Barry from NoHo Hank. Superman tries to plead with him, but Metamorpho is convinced there is no hope and threatens Superman that if he talks again, he'll shove his whole kryptonite arm down his throat. We jump to the Justice Gang headquarters, where Lois is trying to convince them to help her rescue Superman, and it falls on deaf ears. Well, sort of. Mr. Terrific has some sense of honour at least, and accompanies Lois on her mission. It's now time for the trial of Superman. To get some answers out of Superman, Lex has to line up a bunch of innocent people and play some Russian roulette with them. Except these people don't know anything, and so Superman is forced to just watch Lex kill them. Outside, Mr. Terrific and Lois has arrived at the last known location of Superman, the desert base camp, with the transdimensional tunnel. Several of the Raptor guys try to stop him, but using the T-spheres, he knocks them out like a level 1 grunt in Halo. The way this scene is filmed is almost exactly like the scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, where Mantis and Drax go ham on the guards in the big testing facility, and I mean pretty much exactly. Anyway, after all the guards and whatnot are all KO'd, they find the portal and Terrific hacks the computer. Lois asks why he's willing to risk his reputation to break Superman out, and he says because it will piss Green Lantern off. Everyone's been so mean to Superman apart from these two. Back in prison, Metamorpho begins to feel sorry for Superman after seeing his compassion, and he strikes a deal. He'll help him in exchange for Superman helping him get his son out. Mr. Terrific opens a portal and he and Lois enter the pocket dimension, while Metamorpho uses his abilities to create a mini sun to recharge Superman. Terrific uses his T-spheres to create a kind of glider thing for them to traverse the prison, and Superman is now fully charged. He bursts out of his prison, saves a baby boy and rescues his dog Crypto, then returns to Metamorpho for the big team-up fight. Metamorpho turns his body into some kind of acid and explodes on himself, except for his head, which splashes on the guards and melts their armour. Superman, on the other hand, takes a platoon down into the antimatter river and starts bashing heads, all while holding the kid above it. But oh no, there's a black hole at the end of the river, but there's Crypto to rescue, who grabs hold of them and pulls them out the river to safety. Well, almost, as Superman actually uses his super breath to blow into the black hole that pushes them all back away from it. I don't see how this could work given that black holes work a different way, but whatever. Superman and co follow a T-sphere back to Lois and Mr. Terrific, and all of them fly through just before the portal collapses. Holy shit, there's still 40 minutes left in this film. They really tried packing everything in here that they could. Well, back to Luthorcorp, Lex is super pissed. Lois has whisked Superman away to a hidden location to recharge, and Metamorpho went somewhere with his son, of course. Eve calls up Jimmy. She's scared, but she has something for him, and she makes Jimmy promise to end Lex and then meet up with her. But Lex already knows and sends his guards after her. However, just before she's captured, she manages to hit send, sending her entire phone's contents to Jimmy, with 90% of its pictures of her with less and less clothes. We now cut to the Kent homestead, the hidden location where Lois took him to. Mama Kent goes straight to mothering him back to health, while poor Kent tries to comfort Lois with some wise words. This tender moment is interrupted by Jimmy, who needs to let Lois know everything he's found out, which includes the plans to split Johannapur and turn it into a resort. Sounds awfully familiar to the real world, doesn't it? But just like Greenland, it's not going to happen now that Lois is going to make it all public. This morning sun rises, and as Clark chows down on some breakfast and does his morning chores, he's getting his strength back bit by bit from those strong solar rays. Poor Kent once again delivers some more words of wisdom, helping Clark focus and getting his Superman groove back. What he says is essentially that it doesn't matter what your parents want you to be. They teach you things, sure, but in the end, it's always your choice. You make the decisions of what kind of person you want to become and how you want to make your impact in the world. Once again, another beautiful moment is interrupted, this time by some news position, and war is breaking out between Boravia and Johannapur. And here we get that third trailer moment, where a little kid runs out waving a Superman flag, and the world instantly forgives Superman and calls for his help. How finicky is the human race? It's also very true, it's how people act. Superman begins to suit up, but what's this? Mr. Terrific sends a message, he needs him in Metropolis now. A giant dimensional tear is ripping through the land and heading to the city, ready to devour it and all its inhabitants. The people panic, except of course Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen and Perry White, who know Superman will find a way to save them. After all, they got a story to break out about Lex Luthor trying to make himself into a king. Mr. Terrific shows up at the planet with one of his ships and tells Lois and the code that they need to evacuate, and so they climb aboard, while still working on the story, getting ready to post it on the internet. The rift has reached the city and it's tearing its way through buildings, causing massive damage, but when we cut to Lex's tower, it looks like he's behind it, and they are kind of controlling it, but it's also out of their control. And so he turns the top floor into a flying yacht and floats away from the destruction. But then our boy in blue tights shows up just in the nick of time to save a young woman from falling into the void. He gets a DL from Terrific and begins to formulate a plan when smash, Ultraman flies into Superman and crashes him into a nearby baseball stadium. Mercy is also here, and the two henchmen team up to start delivering a beatdown on Superman. He takes a kick to the balls, and this stuns him long enough for Mercy to hit him with her beam cannon and send a bunch of nanites to cover his body and begin infiltrating him, taking over his mind. Lex, in his little hover hotel room, looks pleased with himself. With Superman incapacitated, Lex lets the president of Boravia know he can start his war, and the troops move in. But Superman doesn't give up. He fights against the nanites and takes flight at super speed, burning the nanites off his body using the atmosphere to his advantage. Ultraman and Mercy chase after him, grabbing on to him to slow him down, and on top of that, a bunch of nanites are in his lungs, cutting off his oxygen. But he just keeps pushing forward, breaking the barrier of Earth and floating into space before turning around and dropping himself back towards the ground at an incredible speed. They crash through several layers of ground, subways, tunnels, and so forth. Lex is losing his mind. He had him. How does he keep winning? Superman crawls out of the hole and vomits up the nanites. Mercy is knocked unconscious, but Ultraman is still ready for a fight. His mask is badly damaged, and so he strips it off, and who could have seen this coming? It's a clone of Superman. Superman puts it together. That's how Lex was able to break into his fortress. He had his DNA, and this clone is engineered to have all of Superman's strength and none of his weaknesses. Once again, the Street Fighter combo simulator engages with Lex at the helm. Programming in moves, and the war back to Johannesburg is in full swing. Can Superman defeat Ultraman and make it to Boravia in time to save all those people? Of course he can, because it's Superman. And he isn't alone. Something Lex didn't count on was the Justice Gang, who are usually non-political and stay out of conflicts between nations, have decided to step in and do something. Green Lantern uses his ring to create a barrier to protect the innocent, while Hawkgirl flaps her wings and blows the invading troops into the dust. Ooh, good. The Boravian Prime Minister tries to flee in his secret tunnel, but the Justice Gang catch up to him, and unlike Superman, who would have put him on trial, Hawkgirl flies him up into the air and drops his ass onto the street from 200 feet up. Splat! We jump back to Metropolis, and Superman is getting his shit rocked by Ultraman while exchanging banter with Lex Luthor. Taking lasers to the face and several punches, Superman looks like he's done. But he's got one more trick up his sleeve. He lets out the loudest whistle ever, and whoosh, in flies Krypto, knocking Ultraman around like a pinball, and like a pet in a pet store, takes off after all the little flying devices and chews them up, cutting Lex off from both visual and also remote control of Ultraman. Raptor troops show up as well, and Superman just straight up demolishes them. Suddenly though, they remember that there is an interdimensional tear happening with a black hole in the centre. So Superman grabs Ultraman and chucks his ass into it, and then regroups with Mr. Terrific to go to Luthor's little floating office ship to shut the rift down. Before Lex can use the teleport tunnel thing to escape, Superman shows up and knocks him to the ground. Lex calls him a piece of shit alien, and Superman delivers on a nose speech about being human and an immigrant. Terrific gets to work on the Luthornet and shuts down the rift and somehow puts buildings back together and whatnot. And then the news comes on the TV, and Lois Lane's article has gone viral. Even Fox News has to admit that they shouldn't have backed Luthor, and gives a half-arsed apology to Superman. We get some brief cameos of Maxwell Lord, played by Sean Gunn, and Superman now stands triumphantly over Lex as he's won. War is over in Boravia, and Metamorpho joins the Justice Gang, and Rick Flag, who we didn't get to see much in this film, still hates Superman and all metahumans. But we will be seeing him again in the upcoming Peacemaker Season 2. Metropolis, along with the aid of our heroes, begins to rebuild itself and save people from the rubble. and Tez is still alive and unharmed and runs to Jimmy, giving him a tight hug. That's cute. Superman flies down to Lois Lane and tells her he will grant her a one-on-one interview, which makes Perry White proud. The two walk off to be more private and of course drop the facade and begin kissing and hugging. She's glad they are both alive and she tells him she loves him, and so it looks like everything is gonna work out between these two. A few weeks later, Superman has fixed up the Fortress of Solitude and repaired the robots, so there is a crash and in walks Supergirl, aka Kara Zor-El, played by Millie Alcock from House of Dragon fame. Turns out Krypto is actually her dog and she stumbles in like a drunk teenager coming from a month-long bender, so it explains a lot. She grabs up her playful pooch, tells Clark thank you for watching him bitch, and goes off to find another world to party on. Superman uses a crystal to download all his memories, since the ones of his birth parents were taken by Lex and destroyed. And this time it's all his memories of Ma and Pa Kent and his life here on Earth. Pop punk begins blaring and we slip into the credits. But wait. There's more! We got a short mid-credit scene showing Superman chilling with Krypto, staring at the Earth from the moon, no less a homage to the All-Star Superman comic book. The scene is ripped straight out from that page. However, then we get a much longer post-credit scene. Superman and Mr. Terrific are surveying the damage in Metropolis, and Mr. Terrific uses his tech to restore everything back to ship shape. Superman begins to complain how it's not perfect, which annoys Mr. Terrific, who then storms off. Superman, feeling a little bit of a jerk, sulks and just kind of stands there looking sheepish. Cut to black. That's it, folks. So that was a lot crammed into 2 hours. While I do applaud that they didn't overuse exposition dumps, especially like the way Jurassic World Rebirth did, many of the times that they did, it felt so conveniently timed because they couldn't find more natural ways to end the scenes. There's also a lot of characters in this film, and sure, many of them just side characters for fans of the comic to pick up on. Many viewers who aren't familiar with the source material are gonna be left scratching their head. Good thing we did a full breakdown then, isn't it? Much of the special effects work was hit and miss. Many of the fight scenes felt rubbery and obviously shot on a green screen. And most of them were over so quickly or cut between other scenes that there wasn't really that thrill of watching superpowered beings beat the crap out one another. Personally, I don't know how I feel about the new Superman. He does a decent job filling out the suit, but often the script does him a disservice, and with all that additional superheroes in the film, it felt more like a Justice League origin story than a straight up Superman film. But what do you think? Which Superman film or TV series is your favourite? Let us know down in the comments, and make sure to leave a like, share and subscribe to the channel as well. We really appreciate it, as we deliver new reviews and breakdowns each week, as well as other videos, and if there are any reviews for films that you would like, please leave it in the comments below. I want to thank you all for checking out this video. I've been your host Sarah, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Take care and goodbye.